Now let's talk about our wide receiver start sits for week 13. We got 4 names here. We're going a little bit deeper because we know we're in playoff time. The waivers are pretty much nothing at this point. The first one we'll talk about is Jerry Jeudy for the Broncos going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. I just mentioned it. It's the second highest over-under on the week at 50.5. I think that's assuming Drew Lock is going to be back. I think you're fading Jerry Jeudy if Drew Lock is not back. But even with him in the lineup, is he a guy that you're willing to put in at your flex spot?
First of all, yeah, Drew Lock has to be back. If there's no Drew Lock, no Jerry Jeudy, and it's not even close. But if Drew Lock is back, man, this is so hard. I think I would try to stay away from Jerry Jeudy. I don't know. The Chiefs are good against the wide receiver position. Against the Chiefs, anyone going against the Chiefs, you expect them to need to throw the ball. The game script's going to be favorable for Denver wide receivers, but I'm just not trusting this Denver offense at all. They've been dysfunctional all season long. They're coming off of a week where none of their quarterbacks played. I think it's going to take them, I don't expect them to seamlessly get right back into their flow. So
especially against Kansas City.
Yeah, especially against Kansas City. So if you're desperate, you can. But looking forward to some of the other names on this list, I think I'd actually take all 3 of them over Jerry Jeudy this week. So stay tuned and you'll find out who those 3 guys are. I'm sitting Jerry Jeudy if I can here in week 13.
Yeah, I'm with you. The one promising piece has been the target volume, and it hasn't been efficient. You can blame that on Drew Lock. You can blame that on Jerry Jeudy being a rookie. But over the 4 weeks before Week 12, Jerry Jeudy had 40 targets over those 4 weeks. Like, he was at a very high pace. They did what they did with Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, which is move him out of a slot-only guy, started moving him to the outside, moving him around the formation. We saw him step into that wide receiver 1 role. But with how much this Broncos offense has been turning over, like we see Tim Patrick have his weeks. We see KJ Hamler go and score touchdowns, take away some of that target share. It's just tough to trust Jerry Jeudy with any sort of confidence. Let's talk about a guy who's a high floor play. You probably have him on the back of your bench as a depth piece. We talked about depth versus upside at the beginning of the show, but it's Cole Beasley, who in Week 13 has a matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. It's coming off a floor game, 9.3 fantasy points, 2 for 25. I guess, he had that pass as well. He had a passing touchdown that kind of saved his day on a trick play there against the Chargers in Week 12. But are you willing to start up Cole Beasley if, whether it's due to injury, due to COVID, or just lack of studs on your roster? Would you be willing to plug in Cole Beasley as a flex play? He's the wide receiver 24 on the year, so should technically be a wide receiver 2. I don't think I'm feeling it.
I think I'd be willing to start him if I was desperate. Obviously I'd like to be starting studs out there instead of Cole Beasley, but in games where John Brown has missed, when John Brown's going to be out for this game, Cole Beasley has been a lot better than games with John Brown, and he's been very consistent. The targets are there. Josh Allen is throwing the ball a ton. Last week was a bit of a down week. Luckily, he was bailed out by that passing touchdown. But I would expect Cole Beasley to have a fine game here against San Francisco. He's a floor play. He is one of those guys you're really hoping for, 5 catches, 50 yards, 6 catches, 60 yards, and he gets you a solid baseline at your flex spot. I don't think he's going to absolutely take the top off in this game against San Francisco. So, I'm willing to start him. Of course, I'm not, going through the matchups this week and be like, oh my gosh, I wish I had Cole Beasley on more of my teams. But if I'm in one of those pinches, I think he's a fine play.
I think if you like Jacoby Myers, who's really come to prominence on the Patriots, if you like Jacoby Myers, I think you have to like Cole Beasley. And that Bills offense is much more electric than the Patriots offense right now with Josh Allen still cooking. San Francisco, it's not the best matchup in the world. I think Cole Beasley can be productive. I am willing to plug him in as a mid to low end wide receiver 3 flex play in Week 13. But let's move over to a guy who's had his best game of the season in Week 12. Boy. Alex, I'm interested as a Colts truther, an absolute stan. Tell me what you think about T.Y. Hilton coming off a 18-point fantasy game against the Tennessee Titans. 4 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown. Again, by far his best game of the season against Houston, who's towards the bottom, if not one of the worst against receivers. Yeah. Are you willing to plug T.Y. Hilton back in and go back to with a 31-year-old who is sitting as the wide receiver 69 in PPR leagues currently.
I'm willing to. I don't want to, but if I need a streamer, if I'm dealing with, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans on bye, and I need a streamer, I'm willing to go to T.Y. Hilton. He's got as good a matchup as anyone. I expect the Colts to have to throw the ball in this game. His snaps were up last game. Now, given that was because they were in a comeback situation, but he got in the end zone. I have to give my brother props for this one. We were debating all week through Thanksgiving, through everything. He's like, man, I just feel like this is going to be the week T.Y. Hilton gets his first touchdown. Should I pick him up and start him in my league? And I was like, dude, you are crazy if you do that. We're both Colts fans. Surely enough, shout out to Brad. He called it. T.Y. Hilton got into the end zone for the first time this year against Tennessee. So maybe we needed to have him on as a guest this week to look in his crystal ball and see if he'd get in against Houston. But I do think you ride the hot hand. I think T.Y. Hilton's someone you can stream. We know what he does. He's got that deep ball upside. So, he's probably going to get you somewhere from 5 to 8 targets. You just have to hope that one of them is that big play. He's one of those boom or bust guys. I don't think the floor is there, obviously, with T.Y. Hilton anymore. So you're really banking on a couple of those long chunk plays or the touchdown. Now with Phillip Rivers, those do come less frequently than they did back in the day with Andrew Luck. But if you're desperate, I think you can roll him out there. He's got the great matchup, which is the only thing drawing me back to T.Y. Hilton. And honestly, Steph, he's my boy, so I just want to see this guy succeed. So I'm hopeful that he keeps it going this week against Houston.
Yeah, that matchup, it's just you circle that one every single week.
I mean, Houston, and then Vegas, and then Houston again. So if you've had some injuries and you've been rotating flexes, pick up T.Y. Hilton. Even if you don't start him this week, see what he does. And if he has another hot game, he's going to have another 2 really good matchups after this week.
Well, another older wide receiver who has a smash matchup in week 13, who I think I would put him over. No, I definitely would put him over T.Y. Hilton is Nelson Agholor, who has been operating as the wide receiver 1 for the Raiders. Turns out the Henry Ruggs draft pick, just drafting based on 40 time, is not the move. Sorry to hear that, John Gruden. But Nelson Agholor against the Jets in Week 13. Again, smash matchup. He actually, as I'm seeing here, he's dealing with an ankle injury right now. He didn't practice today. Assuming he's active and in the lineup, how do you feel about Nelson Agholor this week? I think I have him as a flex.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll start Nelson Agholor if he's active and healthy this week. I was in a pinch last week, had Julio Jones out, had Adam Thielen on the COVID list. I had to start Agholor. And even in the worst game of Derek Carr's career, somehow Nelson Agholor came out of there with 10 PPR fantasy points, which all things considered, I was certainly happy with. And here against the Jets, another great matchup. Surely Derek Carr is going to bounce back in some way, shape, or form this week. Agholor's been, the number 1 on that team so far this season. Hunter Renfro's had his fair share of good games as well. But I think Agholor, of the wide receivers on the Las Vegas Raiders, has the best chance to get into the end zone, and I think he has the best chance for the most volume as well. So find a roll at Agholor, and I'm with you. I'll take him over T.Y. Hilton, who we just talked about. I'll take him over Beasley, and honestly over Jeudy as well. I like him the best of all the wide receiver start sits this week.